What's up, people of YouTube? My name is General Prime and welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification icon for more videos. You know, despite the fact that our 4.5 billion year old planet gets constantly shit on, destroyed, dismantled, and is almost deliberately being driven to hell by the anomaly we call humanity, you cannot deny the fact that this tiny, insignificant, inconsequential speck of dust suspended in a sunbeam we happen to call home is one beautiful masterpiece, teeming with life as we understand it, in all forms and categories, sizes and shapes, and with more diversity in it than there are colors on the spectrum. I mean, what's not to love about our natural world? I always talk about how far humanity has come despite the mountains of odds stacked against it. But permit me to go a step further, you attentive bell icon clicking subscriber. There are people who will never exist, some of which could have influenced our world in one way or the other, and as such, they will never be able to reap the benefits of the ability to realize, marvel, and appreciate what we have come to understand as beauty that millions of years of evolution has carefully curated for us humans to indulge in. And if I'm really going to have to ask, what really is beauty, and what have we attributed such a description to come to the conclusion that whatever we deem beautiful is pleasing to the eyes and satisfying to the soul? Why do we look at a burning mass of gas filled with mostly hydrogen and helium 92 million miles away from our planet and then describe it as beautiful when it glazes our evening sky? Why do things like waterfalls and rainbows, the autumn season, or symmetrically sedimented mountainside, a brilliant sculpture, or an intricately barbecued piece of steak leave us in awe and wonder? Why does it feel like our hearts sink and we get starstruck when we first lay eyes on some other human we happen to find appealing enough to go as far as using that dreadful term, love? There probably is a very good and detailed scientific explanation for all of these feelings and emotions coursing through our feeble bodies. It probably could be that our brains, over its rigorous course through thousands of years of evolution, has developed the capacity to understand and decipher what is safe from unsafe, or brings comfort or pain, or stress or distress, and then categorizes them into boxes of interpretation that in time come to have different meanings. And so the very fact that you're existing now at this point in time in our evolutionary process with the ability to be sentient enough to understand and appreciate what nature has offered us is too comically impossible to just be by chance. And I'm going to go all out to say, regardless of my nihilistic view about our universe, if our sole purpose for being here is simply to appreciate the beauty, complexity, and sheer majesty of the reality we have found ourselves in, then so be it. But then there are those of us who, despite the appreciation for how sublime and majestic our natural world is, cannot wrap their heads around the fact that the universe and everything in it does not care about beauty or us, that the way the world looks is purely out of necessity and functionality, and that we are the ones that have interpreted all of that to mean beautiful. People who clamor around the belief that order, symmetry, and life in general couldn't have possibly been derived from the chaotic nature of the universe, and so they resort to credit all the good that our natural world has provided for them so far to the specific deity they believe in and ultimately worship. It sort of reminds me of that Douglas Adams puddle analogy about the puddle that wakes up one morning to find himself in a hole he concludes must have been made for him simply because it happens to fit him well. But then, alas, the sun comes up and dries him up gradually, even as he continues to convince himself that he is fine. And that's what these people seem to forget, that duality exists and the world we live in could be quite ugly, menacing, and maniacal. I am often presented with the question of, if God does not exist, then how do you explain the mountains, skies, the sea and stars, and the beautiful animals in the world? When I try to explain that they are playing the God of the Gaps card with such questions, they don't seem to agree or understand. So in this video, I'll be doing something different. It could have been very easy for me to talk about things that disprove the existence of God, but that would be cheesy and, well, easy. So instead, I'll be talking about 7 animals that disprove the existence of God in no particular order, except for number 1, my actual reason for wanting to do this video in the first place, the platypus. Look at this thing. We know that organisms evolve functions mostly for practical reasons, either to help them be better hunters or blend with the environment they find themselves in. And you can't really blame evolution for that, and I have to say nature knocked it out of the park with this one, because the platypus is over practical. But if we're going to say God did this, then what on earth was he thinking? Is it a duck? Is it a squirrel? Is it a beaver? Or is it a joke? Why would God create such a Frankenstein's monster? Does he have some sick sense of humor we are unaware of? This animal looks like a weapon a pissed off bitter woman has crafted with materials in her kitchen she wants to use to destroy her cheating husband. It's too unbelievable to be real, and trust me when I say if the platypus was extinct, Christians wouldn't believe that it ever existed. Kind of like how many don't believe that dinosaurs once did. Number 2, sloths. You know, Given that this is one of the 7 deadly sins, I can't imagine why an omniscient being would fabricate such a creature. It's lazy, it's ugly, it isn't smart in any way, and it's very, very slow. Painfully slow. Disturbingly slow. These creatures live on trees and feed on leaves with very low nutritional value, and they tend to hold their poop for long periods of time because climbing down to take a shit could mean being launched for a predator, and when they eventually do and are successful about it, it's a sight that can never be forgotten. Number 3, snakes. Snakes make no sense physically. One question I always ask is, if these reptiles previously had limbs as the Bible suggests in Genesis, and their limbs were removed by a curse, then how about other limbless creatures like worms, snails, and eels? Also, let's assume that the talking snake in the Bible was a python. Why did the curse affect all other types of snakes? They did nothing wrong. It doesn't seem fair to pay for crimes you didn't commit. Oh, wait. Number 4, koalas. These furry creatures, as cute as they might seem, are far from what one would call smart. Evolution is a cruel mistress, and not every organism gets endowed with favorable features. This animal is so dumb that it won't even recognize its primary meal of eucalypt leaves if it was placed right in front of it. It would literally starve to death if its food isn't directly on a tree. Also, why would God create an animal that has to feed its young with its poop? Because its young is unable to produce bacteria that can protect it from the toxins it ingests from the plant it eats. Number 5, mosquitoes. Now, imagine with me for a minute that you happen to wake up one day only to discover that you have somehow managed to become an omniscient being, capable of creation by just speaking mere words, which logically, of course, is what you go ahead to do. And then you create a tiny 6-legged insect, and you go through your infinite wealth of knowledge to try to bestow traits on this insect. Do you A. Give both sexes of this insect the ability to produce their own nutrients and also feed primarily on nectar from flowers? Or B. Give all of those jolly traits to the male alone, but make the female a pesky, annoying nuisance whose only way of making proteins for her eggs is to suck the blood of humans and other animals, and in turn riddle them with diseases like the Zika virus, yellow fever, and the infamous malaria parasite that has literally killed millions of people? I sure as hell know which one the Christian God has chosen. Here is another scenario for you. Imagine that you're still that omniscient being, but have somehow seen the error of your ways, which by the way absolutely goes against the idea of omniscience in the first place, and now you want to undo the harm that the mosquitoes have caused. Do you once again A. Make them slowly go extinct because of how useless they are, or B. Make one of the most useful insects to both man and the planet because of their abilities to make a ton of honey and in turn pollinate a lot of flowers, continuously dwindle in number and slowly go extinct? Again, I am perfectly aware of the choice the Christian God has made. Number 6, butterflies. It is true that creativity has no limits, but sometimes one has to step back to reflect and be introspective so they won't cross the line of creativity and find themselves in the embrace of insanity. And that's basically what the butterfly is. An insect that, if it is to be believed was created by God, must have been created after he got fired from a job that meant a lot to him, only to return home to find his wife in bed with the devil. Either way, the creation of the butterfly can only be done at the hands of a madman. An insect who kidnaps a mosquito, then lays its eggs in the mouth of the mosquito because it knows the 6-legged freak will eventually insert its needle-like mouth into an animal or human, which in turn will deposit the egg into the skin of the human, which then incubates and eventually hatches, then pops out of the skin like a pimple, flies away and repeats the process again, should not exist. And the very fact that it does shows how cruel evolution can be, or how messed up this loving God of theirs really is. And finally, number 7, the mayfly. These light-addicted, mouthless insects are the very definition of you only live once, because the female adult mayflies live for an outstanding period of, wait for it, 5 minutes or even less, while the males live for at most 2 days. And in all that time, guess what they spend their entire lives doing? Lots and lots of until either they are eaten or die after laying eggs. I like to imagine that the reason God created these tiny little buggers is just so they can be food for other animals like birds and fish. Imagine your entire lifespan to be just 5 minutes long, and in all that time, all you need to do is procreate while trying to evade predators. That seems unnecessarily fair if it's coming from a sentient being who apparently is loving and understanding. But no, none of these animals were created by some god with a deliberate plan in mind. They are just products of evolution by natural selection. Sometimes it comes out beautifully in a way we humans can appreciate because we have the ability to, and other times it's abhorrent, illogical, and even deadly. Beauty itself is a human construct, a concept that we have all agreed exists and is worth recognizing. But that's not all that our planet and ultimately our universe has to offer. There is ugliness, chaos, and apathy, and it really is unfair and even short-sighted to attribute all the positive traits of the world we live in to some deity instead of looking into both the good and the bad, studying them properly, and appreciating them for what they actually are. But that's it, guys. I know there are so many other animals I could have mentioned, so let me know if there are any I missed by leaving your opinions and comments. Like the video if you enjoyed it because it helps me out a bunch. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you guys later. Cheers.